If ham radio, amateur radio, or you know what, even CB and GMRS, if radio is a disappointment to you, and if you're bored with it, why should you keep doing it? What value does it have in today's world? I'm going to go through a few of those key points and my responses to them coming up right now. This is another Reddit article. And the title of the Reddit article is "No Other Way to Say This, Amateur Radio is a Big Disappointment," parentheses, maybe you can help. Now, when I found this article, I read through it. I'm like, what this original poster is saying is not necessarily wrong. He's missing a couple of things. I had a rebuttal and a couple of responses to it, and I started gathering my thoughts, kind of thinking about it. And then I went back to read it for the second time, and I noticed that the post is actually about 8 years old at the time of this recording. Okay. I'm not sure why this one popped up on the front page of Reddit, because I usually don't dig very deep into the amateur radio subreddit on the website, but for whatever reason, this page has popped up and it says the thread has been archived right here. But nevertheless, still some good points here. So let's take a look at this, and I'd very much like to know what you guys think about this in the comments below. But this commenter and response to the comment is really what I wanted to talk about. So let's start at the beginning. I've been licensed for a couple years, finally wanted to step up in the big leagues of radio. I got my own start on CB, as many hams have. Growing up in the 80s and early 90s in a rural area, you could find CB under the couch cushions, usually modified. Yes, same here. Same with me. So I stepped up my game, got my general ticket out of the gate, but in years I haven't been on the air. I've had a QSO, maybe 3 people total. Where I live, large antennas and rigs are out of the question. I have a Yaesu mobile in the car, 2 meter for 40, and 5 HTs from Baofeng crap to a VX6. VX6 is a Yaesu tri-band, fantastic radio. I got coverage from 6 meters, 2 meters, 70 centimeters, and 220, popular in New England, and 900 megahertz, all on FM. Repeaters are dead. DX is non-existent. Now, again, this was 8 years ago, before the solar cycle started to come back up. DX is very much alive and well today, so I can only hope this original poster, his name was Xelix Omega, Xelix Omega. He doesn't put his call sign in here, which is fine. Repeaters are dead. We've talked about that in some videos. DX is non-existent. It was 8 years ago. It's not now. Go POTA. Go do some POTA. On 10 and 15 meters, you will get all the DX you want. FT8. Sideband, actually, but FT8 also. Calling frequencies are empty. That's probably true, and we should talk more about that in a later video. And forget about the SO50 in New England. Hell, I've tried to get 80-plus degree passes to be stomped on by locals in New York City, having a QSO about club meetings. SO50 is a satellite. He's talking about working satellites here. I have not personally worked much satellites myself, but having QSOs about club meetings on the satellite seems like kind of a jackwagon thing to do. You guys who've worked satellites, put a comment below about that. I'd like to know your thoughts on that. Ironically, if I pick up a CB, I can talk to 15 people in under a few minutes, not counting the trucks on the interstate. I've traveled all over New England with my radios, and the story remains much of the same, except for Boston. I don't know why. Except for Boston, he says. I need some help. What can I do to extract some fun from this hobby? I play with experiments in radio with digital modes or building things, but I can't test them anymore. I love radio and enjoy playing with them. This is a hostile environment for a ham in New England, both man-made and technologically. Digital radio, you're a heretic. I don't know if he means digital radios in FT8 or if he's talking about like DMR, D-Star, and that type of thing. And he signs off with Psy. Okay. All right, so a couple of key points on that I wanted to make first was, first of all, solar cycle's back up, and you can work a lot of DX now. Single sideband, CW Morse code, FT8, RTTY, all kinds of modes. Okay, not just FT8. I was joking earlier when I said FT8. Although FT8, you can do some really cool DX on FT8 as well. So the solar cycle's up, DX is up. I said at the beginning, I believe it was on my New Year's Eve live stream, New Year's Eve 2023, so about 2 months ago at the time of this recording, I issued a challenge. It's not the first time I've done this. I issued a challenge to several of you and said, hey, key up your local repeater once a day and throw out your call sign. See who comes back to you. It's one thing to complain about your repeaters being dead. It's another thing to contribute to the problem. So if you're going to complain that your repeaters are dead, and I'm guilty of this myself, okay? I'm guilty of this myself. I've been trying to... I had a 10-minute QSO with someone on my local repeater this morning. But overall, I'm guilty of this myself. If you're going to complain that your repeaters are dead but never key them up yourself, you're part of the problem. Stop being part of the problem and be part of the solution. Key up your repeater once a day. Maybe a couple of repeaters. You got 2 or 3 repeaters near you? 440 repeater, 2 meters? You got a 220 repeater near you? Key it up once a day Okay, do 220 once a week. Do 440 and 2 meters once a day. Do the 2 meter repeater a couple times a day. Throw your call sign out, see what happens. Challenge thrown down. He talks about CB radio, and while I don't have anything against CB radio, I came up from CB radio myself. He talks about picking it up and talking to 15 people in under a few minutes is what he says. I have not experienced that to be true in a long time. I have traveled with a CB several times recently, monitor channel 19 for traffic conditions, and I don't hear many people talking on CB unless the skip is up, which it is right now. The skip is up, which means propagation's up, the solar cycle's up. Same reason that 10, 15, 20 meter DX is up right now. 11 meters is up too. There's probably some DX outside of the USA stations on CB radio, but I haven't plugged up my CB in a few months, so I haven't checked. But the last time on the solar cycle, on the bottom of the solar cycle, when I had my CB running, I didn't hear much at all. So that's not been my experience, but maybe in New England it's different. Anybody in New England, please comment below. Let me know if you agree with anything that this guy just said. Two of these comments, again, this is an archived thread, so you can't really see, or you can't respond to it anymore. You can read it. You can read it all day long. But two of these comments I wanted to comment. I went into comment on the comments, okay? The first guy here has probably the best name I've seen on Reddit in a while. Me and Your Mom. That's his pseudonym on Reddit. Okay, good. He said, and then they complain the hobby is dying, can't figure out how to get any young blood interested. Same thing happens here on the West Coast. I stopped trying to play in their sandbox. It wasn't worth it. Okay, so he goes on and he says in a longer post right here, the high school level kids look at it and think it's neat, but why bother when you have the internet? I mean, what's really the point of ham radio? I find it fun sometimes, but as far as effective communications method, there are many better ones out there. The FCC rules surrounding amateur radio have failed to evolve just as much as the operators still using it. That is probably the only true statement he's made in this paragraph so far. So let's continue on, and then I'm going to give you my thoughts on what he's saying here. Don't get me wrong, I love messing with my radios, but using it gives me the same feeling as when you get the string and the tin can to work as a 6-year-old. It's neat, but why am I doing this? I'll just call my cell phone and have a clear private conversation or a video call. This, again, this article is 8 years old, but I'm recording this video 2 days after AT&T had a nationwide outage where 72,000 of their customers had no internet, no cell service, internet, telephone, nothing for about 6 hours. 2 days ago, this happened, 2024. So don't tell me you can pick up your phone anytime and have a regular conversation. No. Most of the time that's true, but 100% of the time, no, does not happen. And how many times have you guys been driving a clear conversation, private clear conversation? Where? Where are you getting that? Drive outside of the Metroplex and try that clear conversation and see how well it works. Yeah, okay. The networks are not that great. I mean, they work. You can call someone and get a message across, but don't make it sound like it's, virtual reality and they're sitting next to you. That doesn't happen. There is an argument that it's good to have for an emergency, but then why learn and get licensed? Okay, so then why learn and get licensed? The test itself tells you in an emergency, all bets are off and you can bend any rule. That is not true. Okay, that is simply not true. You have to understand how the FCC defines an emergency. They define it as an immediate threat to your person or property. I said in another video recently that someone had commented on one of my videos and said they were running net control during a storm watch one night, and some guy keyed up on the repeater and said he was asking for information, and net control asked for his call sign. He didn't have one. The guy without the call sign was like, well, it's an emergency. I thought I didn't need a call sign during an emergency. Unless the tornado is in your backyard, and if it is, why are you on a controlled net right now? Okay, you should be getting out of your house. Okay, then there is no immediate threat to your person, property, or family. So it's not an emergency, as the FCC defines it. Now, whether you agree with that definition or not, that's just how it is, okay? So this right here, why learn and get licensed? Why learn and get licensed, okay? And I have said this many times in many videos in the past. Do you go by, those of you who are 2A supporters, please raise your hand. Okay, good to meet you. Are you going to go buy a firearm, shotgun, rifle, scary-looking evil assault rifle, handgun, revolver, semi-automatic? Are you going to go buy that firearm and say, great, I got it for an emergency, put it in the drawer and leave it there until the need arises? I hope you loaded your magazines, and it hadn't been too long since you loaded magazine and know where it's at and know where the box of bullets are at. If you haven't loaded the magazine, where's the magazine? How do you know you're going to shoot straight? It's not easy to do if you've never practiced it. So radio's the same way. You practice amateur radio, you practice GMRS radio, you practice getting on the radio and programming your radio in times of non-emergency so that when an emergency happens, you are prepared. That's called being prepared, okay? The term prepper can get a bad taste in some people's mouths these days, but the motto of the Boy Scouts is always be prepared. And they've had that motto for a lot longer than Doomsday Preppers has been around. So be prepared. There's nothing wrong with being prepared for radio, for comms, for safety, firearm safety, food, water, shelter. There's nothing wrong with being prepared. So that's why. That's why learn and get licensed. That's why right there. Perhaps the set of skills knowing how to use radios and repeaters works for a major disaster. Okay, he gets a little bit into it. But as someone who has worked in major disasters, even third world countries have cell towers back online within hours. Well, Puerto Rico didn't. When they had that big hurricane flood down there 2 or 3, 4 years ago, part of that island was without power for 8 freaking months. Without power. Not without cell coverage. Not without internet. Without power for 6 to 8 months in parts of the island after that big disaster that happened down in Puerto Rico. Okay, that was in 2022, I think. And he's talking about even third world country will have them back up. Nope. Incorrect. Puerto Rico is part of the USA. They didn't have power for 6 to 8 months in part of the island. So no, that's not a guaranteed thing either. Hurricane Katrina, ham radio was one of the only ways to send messages into and out of the area because of all the devastation, and that lasted a week or so, 4, 5, 6 days. So no, I don't agree with that statement at all. And he says, he kind of closes out, not meaning to hate here, I love my radios, but it's a dying hobby because it's being less relevant in this age. I completely disagree with that statement. Yeah, he's missing the boat. He is wrong. He doesn't understand the prepper mindset and the prepper mentality. And I use prepper in the positive sense here, as in being prepared and being aware of what you are going to need in times of, this is just natural disasters. I'm just talking about natural disasters. Tornado, floods, hurricane, earthquakes, these kinds of things. I'm not even talking about government hostile takeovers or anything like that. I'm just talking about natural disasters, okay? Because Puerto Rico and Hurricane Katrina were natural disasters, and ham radio was very useful in both of those entities. So I don't agree with him here at all. So you got several lines of comments and people responding to what he said, and you got one commenter down here that I want to read to as well. But first I'm going to tell you about ham radio prep. If you want to get your ham radio license, which is very useful to use in times of non-emergency, just like I said, head over to hamradioprep.com. Grab your smartphone, download the free app on your iOS or Android device, and get started learning ham radio prep today. If you want to purchase their classes that are online on your desktop browser or on the phone, you can save a 20% discount with the coupon code of Jason20. It opens up a lot more training material and a lot more knowledge that you can use to get licensed, but download the app for free today, hamradioprep.com, and thank you for supporting this channel. So we scroll down a little bit here and we find, everybody's replying to him and all these indented replies. And this one right here, I like this one. This one is by Unami99. By that logic, why would anyone ever want to go for a sail in a sailboat, or go camping/hiking, or prepare a meal at home? So much of what we do can be viewed as obsolete in some way, yet doing it offers all kinds of satisfaction. I love sailing, camping, hiking, cooking. My homemade pizza just keeps getting better and better. I also love putting up my own antennas and building some of my own gear. If you don't love any of those things, you can get a Segway and a bunch of microwave dinners and a laptop. Very well said. But there is a lot of life to be experienced by more direct contact with the physics of the world. Radios have RF detection, modulation. Cooking has heat and chemical reactions. Camping offers firsthand interaction with nature, wilderness, shelter building. Sailing offers a taste of raw wind power, which is very close to flying at times. It sounds to me like you don't really get the magic of radio, which is totally up to you. We call that being an appliance operator. Zing. Ouch, that had to sting. Many such hams find their way to the VHF, UHF, FM, which is basically like a mobile phone. Call it only with PTT rather than full duplex. So I would agree with that statement. Maybe a little harsh, but not untrue. So the point of ham radio is to prepare now in times of non-emergency so that you might need it in an emergency. And MCOM is great, okay? A lot of people say MCOM has no place in ham radio. I don't really agree with that, but I think ham radio is much, much, much bigger than MCOM. Getting it only for MCOM, I think you miss out on a lot of stuff. That last commenter, he was talking about the magic of radio. It is really fun to go out and set up at a POTA park and find out all of the stations you can contact all over the United States, all over South America, all over Canada. You guys in Canada have some really loud stations that sound great down here in Texas, especially if we're down in Galveston on the Gulf of Mexico. So it's fun, and you can work DX, you can work the South Pacific, you can work the Pacific and the South Pacific, Hawaii, you can work Asia, you can work Europe, lots of European stations when the solar cycle is up. It's a fun activity to do, which is lost in just the internet-connected stuff that goes around the world. Internet and 4G, 5G networks are not bulletproof. The likelihood of the internet going down all over the world is very, very, very minimal. It's very minimal that something like that would happen. But in an area, in a localized area, in a regionalized area, it happened 2 days ago with AT&T, okay? It happened 2 years, I think it was 2 years ago. 2 years ago with Puerto Rico, okay? And it happened, 10 or 12 years ago with Hurricane Katrina. So, yes, it still happens today. And radio, not just ham radio, CB radio, GMRS radio, can be a valuable tool in your toolbox in times of need for an emergency when everything else is down, because cell phones, satellite phones, and internet all depends on some other kind of network that someone else is running from another location. Radio doesn't require that. Put your comments below, guys. I'd love to know what you think.